Do you think that it's fair to say that using psychedelics, plant medicines, however you want to call them, that they potentiate the activation of neural pathways in the brain that you would otherwise maybe not have the possibility to activate in your life, which then allow you to experience non-dual states and, yeah, have a different experience of life, let's say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is at kind of the most generic level. This is what we can say that psychedelics are doing. That the human ego and the human mind gets stuck in ruts, and those ruts are incredibly influenced by the family we were raised in, the social, cultural, political, religious context that we were raised in, and the historical time period that we're raised in. And through the development of the ego, a lot of that just gets absorbed and in kind of entrenched at an unconscious level. And just a novel psychedelic experience where somebody's not looking to heal, they're not looking to transform. They take a psychedelic for the first time, and it's going to be like, whoa, I've never seen anything like this. I haven't felt this way. Because what's happening is that these psychedelics basically tend to function as neurotransmitters. And so what we're doing is we're changing the molecular structure of how the neurons are firing and relating to each other through these different molecular tools. And what it does is it allows different parts of the brain to interact with each other in ways that they're just not used to, or that might be quite new and quite novel. And since most of what we do is patterned habitual thought and action, and also processing of sensory data and material, that once we introduce a psychedelic, it opens up the possibility for all new kinds of ways for information and literally electricity in the brain to process. And so it's having a direct impact on our energetic system and our experience of reality. And this is where people do find relief from long-standing chronic thought patterns, behavioral patterns, emotional patterns, right? That psychedelics are able to disrupt them and then allow new patterns to form. And, now we are also at the point where lots of research institutes are looking at how psychedelics could potentially even grow new neural networks, can repair people, perhaps people with Alzheimer's, perhaps people who are suffering from dementia, that it actually does help heal and grow the brain, not only in these more psychological and emotional terms of like using different pathways, but actually helping to regenerate where there might have been loss or damage within the brain. So I think that these are very interesting ways in which psychedelics might be applied at a therapeutic level, and then also just for that sense of I'm seeing the world in a new way. I'm experiencing myself in a new way. I'm experiencing my thoughts and emotions in a new way. And that obviously ties back into this idea of creativity, that it's really common that when people take psychedelics, they feel the urge to be creative. It inspires people to make art, to make music, to journal, to write stories, right? That they're very inspired by it because it's so refreshing when we get these opportunities to see and experience ourselves in the world in a way that is different and fascinating from our regular everyday consciousness. And the thing is, when you're stuck in a rut, whatever it may be, it's very hard to see how do I get out. And so part of your question was, do psychedelics make this possible in a way that other tools don't? And I think the answer is yes. So like going to the non-dual experience itself, there are various meditation traditions and practices and spiritual traditions that have teachings about non-duality. And, they say, well, you can spend like 40 years meditating and you might get a little glimpse of this. Or, you do this devotional practice for, the next 20 lifetimes and like maybe you'll get there somewhere. So just like the non-dual experience, it's very, very difficult for people to actually have that experience. Mostly going back to something we were talking about earlier is because the only way to have a non-dual experience is to transcend the ego. But the ego doesn't know how to transcend the ego. And so the ego tries all these methods to transcend the ego, but by engaging in those methods, it's reinforcing the ego because it's the ego that's doing that.
Yeah.
So it's this weird paradox. Like the only way you can have a non-dual experience is to not try. Like, oh, God, so then what do I do? It's like, well, fortunately, 5-MeO-DMT exists. And so here's a molecule that energetically interacts with your brain neurostructure to override the patterning of the ego, and therefore you have an ego transcendent experience, and you experience non-duality directly. And, one of the things that makes me laugh, being in the psychedelic world is every once in a while you'll come across someone who will say, oh, well, I don't need psychedelics to have these experiences. I can get there on my own. I can do it on my own. And it's like such an egotistical statement for people to say that. And usually it's laughably incorrect. Meaning, like, if you took somebody like that and if you gave them like 7 grams of mushrooms, they'd probably be freaking out because they'd say, oh my God, I've never experienced anything like this before. And even working with 5-MeO-DMT, that I had worked with people who said, oh yeah, I've had a non-dual experience before, either through meditation or tantric practice or some kind of spontaneous experience. And of those who made those claims, I never once had someone then have a 5-MeO experience and say, oh yeah, I've had that experience before. It's always like, whoa, I now realize that my experience was nowhere near what I just experienced on 5-MeO-DMT. So I do think that psychedelics make certain levels of experience and transformation possible that I don't think actually are possible without psychedelics. And some people say, oh, well, then that's just cheating. And it's like, look, they exist within reality, so it's obviously not cheating because they exist. And that's how they interact with our neurochemistry. It's no more cheating than saying, well, I breathed air and I needed to breathe air in order to live, so I guess I cheated, or I needed to eat food, so I guess I was cheating. It's like, no, actually, sometimes we need to take in something from outside the physical body in order to, actually maximize what the body can do. Like, so try living out in space with no air and no food. Good luck. Let's do that all on your own and be really proud of yourself. So I think psychedelics are like that.